Okay, we're going to continue our little talks here with our virus hoaxing part 3. And remember who's talking to us. This is Mr. Goodman. Remember, cut the name in half and take the opposite. That's who you're looking at. Now, once again, I remind you about background. And off to our right, you'll see some, looks like vessels on the shelf. There's actually 3 things up there, and 2 of them represent the 2 poles. The positive, the negative, the thesis, the antithesis, the yin and the yang. However you want to see it. And then in the middle, there's another device, which is basically what they're always striving for, using the 2 poles to create what they want to create. So let's join Mr. Goodman with a costume which is white. And let's hear what he's going to try to hoax us with now.
Deeper. They go way deeper in the lungs. They cause what we think is called a cytokine storm. It elicits a vicious cycle of the cytokines we talked about in the immune system, which won't turn off and kill cells and causes huge damage, hemorrhage, and inflammation in the lungs. And these patients literally die in their own secretions.
Look how he leans over there towards the items on the shelf. He's a leaner. He leans back and forth, right and left. He won't stay still because he knows he's doing a flow of electricity, a flow of falsehood.
Now, there's a couple of terms we need to talk about that you'll hear a lot, and I'm sure you've already heard. First, the term H and N, the type of flu. H stands for...
Okay, if you name something, it's yours. And oftentimes in the Holy Bible, an individual receives a new name because that suggests new ownership and suggests a new life. So now that you are in charge of naming something, you are in charge. And Adam was given the responsibility to name the animals, for example. Okay, now Jesus was not named by Mary and Joseph. Jesus was named by the angel that came from God. So when you name something, it's kind of like you're in charge and you're over it. So these hoaxsters are over these things because they name them. And notice the switcheroo that was played on you. It started out coronavirus, right? And then they gave it a new name, right? And that's because they didn't really want you to uncover the first hoax, which is coronavirus in all medical manuals is just simply the darn common cold. That's it. Period.
Hemagglutinin gene. Hemagglutinin is a test you do to see if red cells can be clumped together. But this gene in this bird, if we look at this, what it does is it...
Okay, once again, I repeated this in the other videos. You're looking at an eye, and the eye is bewitching. Who has bewitched you? Paul says in Galatians chapter 3, verse 1, 2, who has bewitched you, foolish Galatians? Foolish viewer, who has bewitched you? Here's the evil eye. Now look in the center of it there. You'll see what could normally sort of be referred to as the tree of life. And Dave Johnson has a couple of videos on what he calls the mind computer, which he takes you through this tree of life and tries to explain to you how we're hoaxed using a number coding system. But it's the same general idea. Now, when he explains this hoax virus, this avian flu, he's going to talk about it going through the cell. You see it penetrating and then going into the tree of life, going into the Kabbalah. In other words, he's telling you indirectly that it's a hoax. It's nonsense.
Enables the virus to penetrate the cell. It's the key to the lock in getting in the cell. That's the H number. The N number stands for neuraminidase gene, and it's the way out. It allows the virus particle.
Okay, that's how witchcraft is used on you. It goes through a system like the mind computer system or the tree of life Kabbalah, and then it comes out and it attacks you. Not a virus, but the hoax. Those are hoaxes coming out.
get out the scissors which cuts away the final ties to the cell. And they are numbered in the sequence of their discovery, so we call, for example, the 1918 flu H1N1. The modern flu that we're looking at now, the avian flu, is called H5N1. And we think this variant may be every bit as deadly as the 1918 flu.
We think it might be as deadly. Well, we just didn't decide to pull out the whole hoax system. An avian flu could be what the coronavirus nonsense is right now, all right? They just didn't pull out the stops and take the whole system with it. They might have tried, but nobody was buying it. But for right now, they pulled out all the stops and went all across the world with the hoax. But the avian flu could have been as deadly as what? The 1918 flu hoax.
But it has one major difference. This flu, if you look at the pattern of the worldwide...
Oh, goody, goody, goody! We're going to go to China! Because remember, China is the place that you blame for these things, all right? So now let's go to color-coded hoaxes. Now the reason they're color-coded is because they're showing you with color how they perform a hoax. The red is a pole and the blue is a pole. Those are your two standard poles. A positive and negative, a yin and a yang, a thesis and an antithesis, however you want to see it. Now you take those two and blend them together and you will get the purple. Okay, so the purple comes out of the Southeast Asia and travels to Russia and Turkey and Egypt. Okay, now this is not about viruses traveling. This is not about birds traveling. This is about lies traveling, okay? So they're trying to show you with color about a lie system, all right? So the red blends with the blue, and then it ends up what? Purple.
Transmission. These lines showing the routes of the spread are actually not human migration routes, they're bird migration routes. Because right now, this flu is going from birds to people. It has not made that jump that...
Okay, that's because they didn't want it to. Now the X in coded system is your 6. And I don't know, a while back everybody was so excited about Fox News. Well, you should be suspicious of Fox, but if you look at the simple coding of numbers, Fox is 666. So they're showing you a 7 there, connecting the birds to the human. There's one line and the other that forms a 7, which is mind weapon. And then if you want to take your 3 birds and either use the 7, that would be 3 7s, or use the 6, 3 6s, 6 into 7. So yeah, there's numbers involved, but they're not always put before you as numbers. And they're trying to say, boy, this avian flu could be as deadly as the 1918 flu. But right now it's not going from birds to humans. Well, for whatever reason, they put the brakes on and didn't make the big lie with this one. But maybe they were using it just to get you ready for the corona lie, the corona hoax.
The pandemic of 1918 made in going from people to people. In other words, we don't get that aerosol infection. And this is the horror that we're waiting for, because if you notice...
Did you hear what he said? This is the horror we're waiting for. And he said it so casually. You know, if you're really expecting something horrible to happen, you don't say it like that.
Pandemic flu has basically been spreading up and down in the same area. It hasn't crossed the oceans yet, as far as we know. Well,
and again, that's another common theme with all the hoax virus, deadly viruses. In Europe, the bubonic plague came across into other lands by merchant ships, the rats and the fleas. Okay, the modern stories now, they're blaming the folks that go on cruise ships. All right, and also to a lot of the airline stuff. You could infect an entire group of people who are on an air flight and all that kind of nonsense. And oh my gosh, this thing could just get pandemic.
Horribly worried about is that this flu, which looks like this, these are what the virus particle.
Okay, those of you that watch these videos, maybe you can find something in this visually. I haven't really studied it. I tried. I didn't come up with too much. But they always put something in these photos and these diagrams and these. I'm showing you a picture of this virus. There's always something there as a clue or as the truth, because they've got to show you the truth in plain sight. So take a look at it, see if you find anything, and if you want to, leave a comment.
Look like if it goes respiratory from human to human, then this may make the 1918 flu look like child's play.
Oh look, he's so excited about that. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we had another flu epidemic, pandemic that killed millions of people? Oh, it'll make the 1918 flu look like child's play. Well, it is child's play because they play with your mind. Now you know that when you're a child, people can hoax you. And they can tell you anything. And you believe it because you're a child. So that's what he meant by child's play.
Because of modern transportation and a slightly long enough incubation period when the patient is...
Okay, there, you can see on the shelf what I'm talking about. The two poles are represented, and then what he's producing is in the middle with the lid on it. So symbolically, they're telling you about witchcraft, but you really don't know it because you have to be in on all the in stuff to understand it.
Symptomatic. The patient has to have time to let this virus develop before it causes symptoms, but the patient is contagious. So, as you know, patients can get on an airplane, be not too symptomatic, just may have a mild cough at first, and then because of the...
Oh boy, he's really hoaxing you now because he knows it's all bull malarkey.
Ventilation systems infect everybody on that airplane. They get out at the next port, and again, you have exponential transmission.
So that's why on these news stories you'll see they have detained the such and such cruise ship. They have detained passengers on flight such and such. They might all be highly contagious. Now, most likely, I can't prove it, but most likely, these so-called cruise ships, they're just phantom cruise ships. In other words, it's just part of the news story, like the War of the Worlds, the hoax radio newscast in October 1938 with Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater. They're just phantom. They're not really in existence, but you think they are. You think an actual cruise ship was stopped and people are detained and all that type of stuff. Now, they could actually stop a cruise ship, no doubt, and they could actually stop an air flight, no doubt. So that part could be real, but I kind of feel like all of it's just hooey-gooey and nonsense.
The likes of which we never saw in 1918 because we didn't have this kind of travel. So caretakers and epidemiologists and people concerned with preventive medicine are terrified.
Oh, they're concerned and they're terrified. Wow. I'm so glad that I have these folks watching over me because I'm a baby. I'm a child. And you are too. Oh, aren't we glad we have these as our parents and grandparents? They're so wonderful to us. They care so much about all of us. Oh, isn't that so nice?
The time when this flu might go human to human.
Might go. That all depends on the script. That all depends on who's in charge of the hoax, like Orson Welles orchestrating it in that radio broadcast. It just all depends who's in charge of the hoax and who says, okay, it's a go. Now it's just epidemic right now. And okay, I give the word, make it pandemic. So then, of course, the word is given. And now we're in the situation we're in because the word was given.
So this is avian flu and one of our great fears.
Look how afraid he is. Now look how he's leaning again. Once again, this leaning to the right, our right, or his left, and then over to our left or his right. So now he's leaning to the fork hand sticking down from the skeleton. So he's leaning back one way and to the other way because he's connecting poles and he's generating electricity in the spiritual realm. Now, not literal electricity like you understand when you plug something in your plug, but it's in the spiritual realm. He's activating spirits of lying spirits. And people that are plugged in to the system, they just absorb them like electricity flowing through your electrical lines in your house. And when you plug something in, that's when you watch the media and you listen to these liars. It's like plugging in, but the electricity being generated is spiritual lies, and they come right into your mind.
Talk about some of the other respiratory viruses, which include measles, transmitted again by droplets, SARS, which we heard about not long ago, severe acute respiratory syndrome, sounds like a generic term, but it was a specific virus, and influenza, which we see on a yearly basis, and which has quite a mutational drift. That's why we need a new shot all the time. We're always trying to keep ahead of that.
There, did you catch it? Because of the mutational drift, we have to get our flu shots every year, and we are trying to keep ahead of it. Now, once again, look at him. He's biting his lips. Isn't it interesting when you freeze frame something, what you see? You don't really see this if you're just watching it full speed ahead. But there it is. I just happened to stop it right when he's biting his lips, because he knows he's lying to you. He knows he's deceiving you. He knows that he's telling you something that the controllers want. They want you to get these shots every year so that your body will be filled with toxins. And then once the toxins interact in your system, God only knows what's going to happen to you. Again, I suspect that what we call Alzheimer's is just simply toxic buildup. And it shuts down part of the brain because all those toxins get up there and the brain can't function right. And so these folks run around, they don't know who they are, they don't know their loved ones they've lived with for 40 years. Toxicity. Not some made-up name.
Measles, called rubeola, is a virus, and there are about 30 million cases a year, with 800,000 deaths. There's a huge number of deaths, mostly in the poorer countries where they don't have widespread vaccination. It's completely vaccine preventable with lifelong...
See, there's your plan. Vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. Go into a poor country where people are not extremely well educated and offer them free injections. Oh my gosh. It borders on genocide, if not genocide itself.
Immunity. It is respiratory droplet transmission, but it infects the lymphatic cells. And it can live and replicate in monocytes, in T cells, in macrophages, and that's very bad for the host, because those cells eventually get into the bloodstream, and then the virus can spread hematogenously, can arrive through the bloodstream, and you get the rash and allergic reaction, which again is the reaction of antibodies and antigens in the skin, cough, pneumonia. You can get encephalitis, which can kill you, brain swelling. You can get hepatitis. and a whole range of diseases. We talked about diagnosis. You really don't have to draw blood. If you look in the roof of the patient's mouth and see little white spots on the palate, and then the patient has the rash, that's measles. Those are called Koplik spots, and we don't see them with anything else. So it's an easy diagnosis and a very difficult disease because it can be very serious, and we don't tend to take it seriously. We need more worldwide mass inoculation for measles.
Okay, folks, you heard it from his lips. We need more worldwide mass inoculations. So what do you think is going to be forthcoming out of this coronavirus hoax?
Those are the respiratory viruses, certainly a threat that we need to worry about. The enteroviruses are the viruses that are passed on through the GI tract. They include polio, they include mumps, hepatitis. Hepatitis A, B, C, D, and E can be passed.
Okay, he said about the GI tract. Now, again, I'm just wondering if basically everything is bacterial based and not viral, and that virus in and of itself is a complete hoax. I'm just wondering, all right? But I do know this. If you keep up a good balance of bacteria in your GI system, you can remain pretty darn healthy. And I have a little tiny video that I think a lot of people ignore when I'm at the pharmacy and I talk about being be probiotic. All right? What that means is you just take in to your digestive system some additional bacteria that will make your system extremely strong so that it will fight almost anything. Now, I think that basically speaking, the human system is capable of fighting almost anything. And that's the difference between the two types of medicines that are offered. Now, at one time, homeopathic medicine was practiced completely everywhere. And then this new school came along, the allopathic, which said, we're going to start treating you with harsh chemicals. So it's just very, very possible that if you keep your bacteria count up, take the probiotic every day, your health will improve immensely. Now, I can say that because I've been doing that now for, maybe 3 years, and I've had nothing. Nothing. All right? Because my bacteria system is really strong. And your strong bacterial system fights things off. Now, if for some reason that bacterial system gets weakened or imbalanced, then you've got some problems, all right? And that's what you got to watch out for, okay? So your health is basically in your gut. And the type of medicine that's presented to us doesn't really reveal that to you. Okay, it just says you need this pill, you need that pill, and you need this shot, and you need that shot. Okay? But if you try to practice this, you'll see what I mean. That your health remains fairly stable and fairly good just by a simple act of taking a probiotic every day.
Through the GI tract, many of the infantile diarrheas and Norwalk virus, the cruise ship virus now that's...
The cruise ship virus. So watch out. If you're planning to go on a cruise with your sweetheart, you may get the Norwalk virus. It resides on cruise ships. I sure hope they spray those suckers down, because I don't want to get the Norwalk virus on a cruise ship.
Very contagious. The three main strains of polio infection have remained very constant. They're RNA viruses and their oral fecal transmission, and it's been an interesting history.
Okay, an interesting history. Well, there's one version of it, and then there's another version. Now, I've got to defer you to Dr. Suzanne Humphries. I have one video where I promote her, and it has a lot of views because I think people are interested in hearing somebody that is truly credentialed, somebody who truly has the ethos in one of the 3 Greek words I shared with you in another video. And she is a doctor that really stumbled upon this and said, oh my gosh, we've been kind of wrong about this whole thing. So what he tells you, remember, he's in the hoax lie system. And polio is not exactly what people said it was. And once again, I'm under the belief that they made it to be a hoax, and they blew it up, and then so people would get the what? The vaccination. Now, I'm one of those ones that got both vaccinations. I got the Salk shot, and I remember on my shoulder I had like scars and stuff from where they shot all kinds of crap into me as a child. And then I also got the Sabine vaccine, which we went to a high school. It was in sugar cubes. And I do remember vividly the day my whole family going to get a little tiny sugar cube in a high school. Okay, so I've been in the system, and I'm just trying to speak honestly with you about it. But Dr. Suzanne Humphries, she's got loads of videos, and she can kind of unravel the polio thing for you. But I do know this also because I've watched a lot of old-time television shows, and often they'll mention it in the shows in the 50s, scaring the tar out of mothers. And I do remember my mother telling me that she was very, very frightened for us as children about polio. Okay, it went through our land as a nightmare. All right, now you have to be a certain age to understand this. And if you're not of that age, you won't understand it. But my mother was absolutely frightened of this because of her family and the children that she had. So it was kind of like every mother's nightmare, polio. Now, it's not exactly what he says, but Dr. Suzanne Humphries, she's a lot more clued into everything and can tell you a lot more.
It was once very prevalent in the upper socioeconomic levels of society. And the reason was that the wealthier wealthier families, kept their children very well protected from this virus. Hand washing, cleaner surroundings, and less crowding. Polio virus is not very serious in the very, very young, in the infants. It's a bad cold and a fever and a cough, and then they get over it. Now, the transmission is oral fecal route. Passes through the mouth, it comes out in the feces, and we all know as we watch our children and grandchildren play that the hands go in the mouth and you're horrified by what they're putting in their mouth. These babies in crowded conditions and with lots of siblings passed that virus through their family when they were very young. They got sick, they got immunity, and they got over it. The upper levels of society at that time kept their children clean, isolated during the time of the outbreaks, and they never got immunity.
Okay, it's time for me to stop right here. And once again, I'd like to thank you for watching. If you got to the end of this video, it means that you really need a thank you for putting up with me in the entire video. Thank you. End of video.